Hello, I'm Mary Horton, Jackson County Treasurer, and you are listening to Texas County Voice, a podcast for all 254 counties. Thank you for listening.
Hello, and welcome to Texas County Voice. I'm Jody Sebron with the Texas Association of Counties. In today's episode, we head to Johnson County, where I recently sat down with Precinct 4 Commissioner Larry Woolley and Constable Detective Dana Ames. They are at the forefront of an investigation prompted by environmental and health concerns involving the use of biosolids in fertilizer. These biosolids are processed from municipal sewage sludge. Alarming levels of potentially harmful per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAs, or PFAS, have been detected in soil, water, and livestock in Johnson County where these biosolids were used. PFAs are so-called forever chemicals because they take a very long time to break down in the environment. Stay tuned as Texas County Voice explores Johnson County's findings and what steps county officials are taking in response. Well, hello, and I'm here in Johnson County with Commissioner Larry Woolley and Constable's Detective Dana Ames. Welcome to Texas County Voice.
Well, welcome to Johnson County.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. We are here because Commissioner Woolley, you and Detective Ames, you have been investigating and dealing with an issue that has generated quite a bit of news coverage. Commissioner, would you just explain what the issue is and why this is important to you?
Sure. Actually, this issue dates back probably 25 years with the land application of what is called biosolids. And biosolids is a term that describes the end product after the sewer treatment process of larger cities. These particular products are coming out of the city of Fort Worth. But this particular investigation did trigger from events in 2022 that triggered about a year-long investigation by our constable's office and Detective Ames. And it's started with some interesting things that were taking place, major fish loss in some stock tanks, cattle death loss, stillborn calves, horses dying, people having personal health issues. These things kind of culminated to the point where our Commissioner's Court felt the need to spend the money necessary and fund the diagnostic testing. Detective Ames had done the research and found out where to get this testing done. Also contacted some consultants that are environmental scientists up in Maryland. They've assisted us through this process in interpreting our results, and our results proved to be pretty shocking. It all triggered from complaints. The first complaint is always the horrendous odors that surround whenever this land application takes place. My phone would light up at the precinct office because most of this activity is in the southeast portion of the county, which is in Precinct 4. The county has no regulatory authority over application of biosolids. It's state permitted. It's handled through TCEQ, Texas Commission for Environmental Quality. And so when people would call to complain about the smell, there wasn't anything that I or we as Commissioner's Court could do about it other than refer them to TCEQ to register an air quality complaint. That said, whenever these other issues started coming forward, that's when the court, did make the decision finally to kind of step out of the box and do something that, as far as we know, no other county's ever done. And that's actually do significant testing, soil, groundwater, surface water, tissue samples from livestock and fish in order to find out what's really going on.
So this was a cumulative things building over the years. You had heard complaints from residents over the years. I was under the impression there was one specific incident involving a stillborn calf or something in December.
Yeah, that
2022.
That was late December, and prior to that stillborn calf being born, there had been some other death loss, and there had been some tissue samples collected but they were from dead livestock that might have been there a day or so, and there'd never been a necropsy done. And when Detective Ames and I visited with the landowners out there, I told them, I said, the next time you lose an animal, let me know and I will come get it. And we'll take it to College Station and get a necropsy done and then have them send samples off to our lab. And the lab we're using is Eurofins, which is in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And that way we'll get an initial necropsy done. That had not been done. So yes, sir, that did happen late December.
Well, that clarifies the timeline a bit for me. So it was this stillborn calf, and the necropsy, the investigation into its cause of death, that triggered Detective Ames' investigation.
Actually, that was just another component of the investigation.
Yes.
She had already done a tremendous amount of soil and water and other tissue samples, but that particular calf, the results from that test at 610,000 parts per trillion of PFAS chemicals in that calf's liver was by far bigger and more substantial than any other testing that we had done or actually our environmental scientists ever even heard of.
Yes.
Let's step back just for a second. What are biosolids and how are they used on farms and ranches?
So biosolids is a term when the sewer treatment process or wastewater treatment process takes place in these larger cities. It comes in liquid form, in a raw form, and it's processed down to a dry or semi-dry product. And there's different classes of biosolids, but this particular product that was going on out there was a drier product, actually, that was labeled as fertilizer. But it's the dry product that has been cooked down and concentrated through that process from, there may have been 10,000 gallons of the raw, or 10,000 pounds of the raw material, and resulting in 1,000 pounds of the processed material. So anything that's harmful in there, these forever PFAS chemicals are actually intensified. They're just more concentrated in the sense of the volume is less, but the concentration is the same. So kind of a pounds per square inch type deal is more concentrated than the raw form.
Yeah, so the process of producing these biosolids concentrates these PFAS chemicals. So Detective Ames, how did you get involved with environmental investigations? This is something you've done previously, right?
So I previously worked at the sheriff's office as a detective, and one of the things that I was charged with was environmental crimes investigations. And so that was my area of specialties, or one of my areas of specialties. I think it was in 21 when I came over. The commissioners here created a special environmental investigative position under Constable Troy Fuller's office. And so it was really just like changing desk, because it's still in the county. And I ended up coming over and working for Constable Fuller, who was also previously my captain over at the sheriff's office prior to getting elected for this position. So it was a natural fit.
Well, when those test results came back showing these alarming levels of these forever chemicals, what was your reaction and the reaction of your fellow commissioners?
Well, the Commissioners Court had been meeting on this on a regular basis, and we were meeting in executive session due to potential litigation. And so everything was not in a public forum. Our commissioners, all of our court, was just shocked. I mean, that, and really validated the decision to step out, and we first earmarked $30,000 for testing. And I think the reaction and the results in the Commissioners Court were really glad we did. Just, couldn't believe. And when we started getting these results, we began planning, okay, when are we going to hold a public Commissioners Court meeting where we can present these findings and educate, the public on what's going on. When that last calf, we were waiting on that because we strongly suspected that it was going to be really, it was going to be significant in the fact that was the first one we had a necropsy on. So we're glad we did, because those results were just so astounding. And that's when we scheduled our public meeting for the 16th of February. It was on a Friday, went through the typical posting, but also I sent probably, between emails and text messages, I sent out probably 100 notices just to landowners, producers, people that I'd heard from in the past concerning these issues. And we had a good crowd that day. We had probably, my guess is 150 people. And they were very quiet and very wide-eyed. We've gotten a lot of feedback since then.
Well, what were those numbers again?
610,000 parts per trillion. Let me put that into perspective in two ways. First of all, a part per trillion would equate to one drop out of an eyedropper in 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Now, EPA just in April came out with an acceptable level of PFAS chemicals in drinking water at 4. So they've considered 4 parts per trillion safe. Not safe, acceptable. 0 is safe, 4 is acceptable, and this calf had 610,000 parts per trillion in its liver, and had in the 50,000 bracket, I think, in the tissue, in the muscle tissue.
It's muscle tissue.
But that was the other one.
That
Yeah.
was a different calf.
That was a different calf.
57,000 parts per trillion. The fish at 57,000
And
74,000 parts per trillion in the fish in the pond, and that's just from runoff
Right.
coming. This land where Detective Ames did the testing isn't where the land application took place. It's across the road and down slope. So it's got this contamination through runoff.
And the scientists who reported the lab results, what was their reaction?
So, Dr. Bennett and Pierre have been absolutely instrumental in assisting us through this case. So they advised us about a study that was done by the USDA where they went out and they had collected fish from different locations across the nation and tested them. Our fish that we tested was higher than anything they had sampled. And then as far as the calf's liver, they had never seen numbers that high.
And keep in mind, this calf was stillborn, never ate a blade of grass, never drank a drop of water.
Yes.
It absorbed those levels through the womb
From its mother.
from its
Yes.
mother, who is likely, that rancher keeps replacement heifers, so that calf's mother could likely be a second or third generation living on that land. So generation to generation, those levels just keep increasing.
What's been the reaction among the farmers and ranchers?
You know, it's interesting. I've heard from people that were considering using this, and we're so glad that we've done this investigation and presented those findings, because I've been told, Larry, I was on the phone about to order this stuff when I heard about it, and I'm so glad I didn't use it. I've heard from people that have said, I've used that in the past, I'll never do it again. And of course, from people that have been using it, that consider it cheap fertilizer, which it's really not. You know, there's been some pushback, and I know that there's been in other counties that I was talking to that have kind of gone radio silent due to pushback they're getting from some producers that are using it. But they're failing to see the big picture here. If they're not looking at the potential harm that we're doing to our water supply, our food chain. I mean, this is going on cropland for this particular application was where they were growing corn and wheat for livestock feed. You know, there's just a big cycle that and now we've got a rancher out there with 150 head of cattle that he's not going to sell until something's resolved here, because he doesn't want to introduce that into the food chain.
Is Johnson County then becoming kind of a test case on where we go with the use of these chemicals?
Well, I guess you could say that. We're the only case.
Yes. To our knowledge, from what we've been able to determine, nobody else has tested the soil and water of adjacent properties that have been negatively impacted by the use of biosolids, nor have they tested the biosolids themselves. We have done both. Nor have they tested the tissue of the animals that have been raised on these properties. We've done that as well.
What can the county do to assist farmers and ranchers who have?
Right now, our position is we're trying to educate our public, educate and empower.
Yes.
We've already had landowners and producers do their own testing. They've gone through, some of them have gone through the lab that we use, some have gone through different places, test water wells, especially water wells. We have one producer that's had a number of stillborn calves and actually lost a number of adult cattle. They had a calf die early June, a stillborn calf, and they took it to College Station to the diagnostic lab for necropsy, and are awaiting those tissue test results. But that calf, for example, was born with no cerebellum. It was badly deformed in its structure or skeleton from the rear rib back. His spine, the rear legs were just really, really badly deformed. And he's had multiples of those.
Yeah, these kinds of abnormalities do happen from time to time, but it's the number that you're
But not in
seeing.
those numbers, no.
That-
I've been in the livestock business all my life. And in the last 10 years on my property, I might have had 2 stillborn calves.
Right.
And
It's something you rarely see.
rarely, very rarely.
What kind of feedback have you received from the community?
Positive. It was such an eye-opening experience, and people are thankful, I think, to know what's going on. They're very concerned. They're very concerned about property value. You know, I've heard from some people that they've told me, I said, Commissioner, I was going to build my dream home on a piece of property right down the road from where you guys are doing this testing, and now I don't know what to do. And I said, well, my recommendation would do your own testing and satisfy yourself as to whether or not your property might be affected. So there's a lot of concern, but I think that all along people have been concerned about this product, and we've all wondered, is this stuff okay for all these years? And now we know it is not. And that's worrying a lot of our public.
What changes do you think are necessary to address these types of issues?
There has to be more, and we have entered into litigation against the Environmental Protective Agency for their failure to regulate. But it's really disappointing that our Texas agency for environmental,
That's TCEQs.
they've not, they could go stronger in terms of regulatory power, but they've not. Their actual statement that their response was, TCEQ is not currently involved in this matter.
Not to defend the lack of action by TCEQ or the EPA, could they be running up against a general reluctance to embrace regulations in Texas?
If they are, I don't know what their purpose is. If they're Texas Commission for Environmental Quality, if we can't expect them to hold people accountable for the quality of the environment and the things that are going into the environment, then I'm not sure what that agency's good for. Maybe we need to have a sunset review.
It's their duty to protect. It's just like a police officer. These people are charged with protecting the environment and us. And when they fail to do so because it's something that might be a little bit different from what they're accustomed to, they have acronyms that are longer than my first name and last name put together.
Yes.
They have a duty, and they need to do it, and we need them to.
As you mentioned a while ago, counties have limited regulatory authority. So what actions can Johnson County and other counties take to push for stronger state-level regulations or local authority to regulate these?
It's going to take legislative impact, and our associations, the County Judges Commissioners Association, has had a standing resolution in our list of resolutions that we adopt every year to ask the legislature to give the counties authority over this. And actually at our North and East Conference, we adjusted that slightly to, in addition to giving counties authority, to expect more accountability from the regulatory agency at the state, to have more regulatory authority over harmful substances in these products. So it's going to take legislative impact. And we've been meeting with legislators, both state and federal, to, hopefully get some legislation written between now and when the session starts next year.
So the County Judges and Commissioners Association has a resolution,
Absolutely.
A legislative resolution that they will advocate for greater local authority come next January.
Yes, sir.
How far does it go in terms of what you would like counties to see? What kind of local authority?
Well, and all along it is stated that just to give counties the authority to permit any land application of biosolids or sludge. The issue with that, now that we have done this investigation and determined how this works, is if County A denies any permits and doesn't allow it in their county, but County B, adjacent to County A, does allow it, we have runoff, we have leaching into our aquifers. Aquifers don't know county lines. So that is an initial step possibly, but the bottom line is it's got to be regulated. And I understand, yes, we are a conservative commissioners court here in Johnson County, and we're asking for more regulation from state and federal authority, but that's what it's going to have to take so that that's a global approach. And I realize that doesn't normally fit our county slogan of one size doesn't necessarily fit all. But in this case, due to these harmful chemicals don't understand county lines, like I say, they thrive in water, so waterways, creeks, rivers, channels, lakes, they're a safe harbor for these chemicals.
Well, congratulations, you're the new president of the North and East County Judges Association.
Yes, sir,
County Judges and Commissioners Association.
Thank you.
And last week at your conference, you gave a presentation on this and the biosolids. What was the reaction?
I've been a county commissioner, this is my 10th year, and I've been going to those conferences for 10 years, and I don't believe I've ever seen a more attentive group during that hour. We ran over. There were a lot of questions, and we were running into the lunch time. There's so much information to cover, and we weren't able to cover all of it, but I've never seen a more attentive group. I mean, those people were focused, their eyes were big, they weren't looking at their phones, they weren't looking at their watch, they had a oh no look on their face.
Mm-hmm.
And Detective Ames, you were part of the presentation.
Yes, sir.
Well, what are you hearing from neighboring counties?
I actually had one county, due to that presentation adjacent to us here, reach out. Prior to last week, I talked to officials from 9 different counties, 8 of which are in the North and East region. I feel strongly that there will be, for example, one county, and he stood up and I already knew this was happening in another county. They're building an elementary school out in a field where this stuff's been applied for years and years. I'm an ex-ag teacher, retired 30 years from being in public education, and I've got a retired ag teacher friend over there that said, Larry, I told them, I don't think that'd be a good place to build an elementary school because that stuff was applied there for years and years. We don't know what's in it. And they didn't know what's in it. Now we do know what's in it because it's coming from the same place that our product's coming from, and they're building an elementary school on it. And there was a county commissioner there Wednesday in our presentation. When he heard this, he stood up and announced that, and he said, we have a problem. He said, that cannot be healthy. So I received feedback from a lot of guys right after that presentation. I'm going to the Panhandle Conference in September to present there, and Detective Ames tells me there's another sewer treatment contractor that has a big footprint out there, so I suspect we'll get a similar response out there in the Panhandle.
You're a rancher too, right?
Yes, sir, lifelong. I have an ag degree. I was an ag teacher.
And how has this affected you personally?
Well, we try to be good stewards of the land and of the water underneath. And I've always known that this is never something that I would do, or if I had close friends doing it, I would try to talk them out of it because suspected there was a problem all along. Now that we know there is, I mean, it's worrisome. There's not been any of this close to my place. Probably the closest has been about 4 miles away. So whether or not our land or my neighboring landowners are affected, I haven't done any testing. I probably will at some point because we have a large stock tank, and it's something that I feel very strongly about. And the stuff's not going to go away. I have grandchildren here in this county, and they're also involved in agriculture. So it's just something that we got to take a real hard look at.
Have there been an unusual numbers of cancers in Johnson County or other health effects?
We're working on gathering some of that information. As you probably know, if you get cancer, you don't call your county and tell them, hey, I got cancer.
Right.
So tracking that kind of data involves a lot of people and a lot of agencies. It's not something that I would readily have available right now. And it will take time to develop that information. But I will tell you that on these properties where these people have been negatively impacted, they themselves have had some very unusual health effects.
Commissioner, what's the next steps for Johnson County?
Continued work with our state representatives, our state senators. We have 2 congressmen that serve this county. The west side served by Roger Williams. The east portion over where these tests have taken place is Jake Elzey. I met with Jake Elzey's staff. I've had personal conversation with Roger Williams. We're hoping to have some assistance from them in terms of some pressure on the EPA. Also, possibly with some assistance with the United States Department of Agriculture. This property where we did the testing, it gets its runoff from the property where the application took place. But on the north side of this property where we did the testing is Chambers Creek. Chambers Creek feeds into Richland Chambers Reservoir over in Navarro County, which provides drinking water for multiple cities, including the city of Fort Worth. The city of Fort Worth has already acknowledged the fact that they have a PFAS issue in their drinking water at somewhere around 8 parts per trillion. So, it's just a big cycle, and it's not going to go away until we get something done here.
And I think also, just to add that, a long time ago, we used to put lead in paint, and we learned that was a bad process, and we stopped doing that. We used asbestos in our homes. This is no different. When you know better, you do better. None of us knew, now we do. And we have to do something. We're not angry, and our farmers that are using this product have believed that they were doing something really great. And many of them have expressed feeling duped, that they feel like they've been tricked or deceived because what they believed was organic or good for the environment now has caused them great harm and their neighbors great harm. It doesn't have to be a divisive issue. It needs to be an issue that we can all come together and say, listen, we've got a problem, but we got to work on it.
Well, I think that this will not be the last time we talk about this. There will be more developments and more conversations to have.
Well, we appreciate Texas Association of the Counties in helping us educate our public and especially all our state officials.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining the show.
Thank you.
That's all for today's episode of Texas County Voice. A big thank you to Commissioner Woolley and Detective Ames for sharing their insights. Their findings could have implications far beyond Johnson County. We'll continue to keep an eye on this developing story. Visit our show page on county.org for links to additional information about today's episode. Look for Texas County Voice under the Resources tab on the homepage of county.org. And please subscribe to Texas County Voice for more conversations with local leaders making a difference in Texas counties. We'll see you next time.